I stood on the balcony of my $4.5 million estate, watching the sunset over the Florida Keys, and pressed send. $15,000. That is what my father, Douglas, said he needed to save his credit score. The notification chimed on my screen. Transfer complete. 2 seconds later, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from him. I expected a thank you. Instead, I read the words that would end our relationship forever. Christmas is at the house this year. Just real family only. We need the photos to look right for Ashley's new fiancé. Stay in Florida. The cruelty was absolute. He took my money, and then he erased me. Before I tell you exactly how I made them regret that text for the rest of their lives, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone into the ocean. I just stared at the screen, letting the silence of my empty house settle around me. My name is Bella. I am 29 years old. And in that moment, standing on the marble floor of a house my father didn't know existed, I finally understood my role in this family. I wasn't a daughter. I was an asset class. A diversified portfolio. My father, Douglas, hadn't raised a child. He had managed a high-yield retirement fund. For 20 years, I had been trained to believe that love was a transaction. If I got straight A's, I earned a smile. If I stayed quiet, I earned peace, and if I paid off his $15,000 credit card debt, I earned the right to be acknowledged. But I had miscalculated the exchange rate. My money was good enough to save his reputation, but my presence wasn't good enough for his aesthetic. It reminded me of being 10 years old. It was Thanksgiving. Douglas and my sister Ashley sat at the main dining table with the guests, laughing over roast turkey. I was set up at the kitchen island, 20 feet away, eating a ham sandwich, because there wasn't enough room at the grown-up table. I felt small then. I felt like a mistake. But standing on my balcony, feeling the ocean breeze, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt expensive. They thought I was the struggling black sheep because I didn't wear logos and drove a practical car. They didn't know I had just sold my artificial intelligence patent for $15 million cash. They didn't know this estate wasn't a rental. It was mine. They used my $15,000 to fund a party I wasn't invited to, because Ashley's new fiancé didn't like my vibe. I looked at my bank balance on my phone. $15,400,000. I rubbed my eyes trying to summon a tear, but there was only clarity. This wasn't a heartbreak. It was a business decision. They wanted real family? Fine. I would give them exactly that. I opened my contacts list. I didn't scroll to my friends. I scrolled to the B list. The outcasts. The people Douglas had discarded because they weren't shiny enough. I stopped at Aunt Teresa. Douglas had banned her from family holidays 3 years ago because she got divorced, and he said her depression was ruining the vibe. She was living in a studio apartment in Ohio. Probably freezing. Then I found the Millers. The old neighbors Douglas had sued over a fence line dispute just to prove he was powerful. I didn't hesitate. I didn't worry about the cost. I started booking. First-class tickets. Private car service to the airport. I wasn't just throwing a party. I was assembling a jury. I texted Teresa, pack a bag. You're coming to the beach, and bring your swimsuit. Christmas morning broke over the Gulf of Mexico like a promise kept. I checked my weather app. In Minneapolis, the temperature was -20, with a wind chill that could freeze exposed skin in minutes. The news alert said the power grid was flickering under the strain of a historic blizzard. I imagined Douglas in his drafty living room, wearing 3 layers of cashmere, trying to convince Ashley that the heating system was rustic rather than broken. Here on Sunset Key, the thermometer read 82 degrees. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. I walked out to the pool deck where my guests were already gathering. Aunt Teresa was there, reclining on a white chaise lounge. I had sent a stylist to her room that morning, and she looked transformed. The woman Douglas had called dowdy and depressing was wearing a silk kaftan and oversized sunglasses, laughing at a joke Mr. Miller was telling. She looked like a queen in exile who had finally reclaimed her throne. I walked over and handed her a glass of vintage champagne. Her hand shook a little as she took it, her eyes welling up. "Bella," she whispered. "I've never seen anything like this. I thought I'd spend Christmas watching reruns alone." I squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore, Teresa. You're the VIP. This wasn't just a party. It was a statement. And statements need to be heard." I had hired a professional production crew for the day. No grainy selfies. No filtered angles. I wanted high-definition proof of life. They set up a long banquet table right on the edge of the dock, draped in heavy white linen. We laid out a feast that would have made Ashley's aesthetic look like a cafeteria lunch. Stone crabs. Lobster tails. Towers of fresh fruit. And bottles of wine that cost more than Douglas's car payment. I took my seat at the head of the table. The drone operator gave me a thumbs up. The device whirred to life, rising rapidly into the blue sky. It swept over the estate, capturing the sparkling pool, the lush gardens, the private beach, and the group of rejects toasting to their freedom. I looked up at the camera and smiled. Not the polite, small smile I used to wear at Douglas's table to avoid trouble. But a smile that said, I owned the ground I stood on. When the footage was ready, I opened Instagram. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew what this would do. I knew it would shatter the fragile peace I had maintained for years. But peace bought with silence is just submission. I uploaded the video. I selected a thumbnail of Teresa laughing with a lobster tail in her hand. Then I typed the caption. It had to be precise. It had to hurt. Hosting the people who stood by me when I had nothing. To the real family freezing in Minneapolis, I hope the $15,000 I sent keeps the heat on. You're going to need it. I hit share. The progress bar zipped across the screen. Posted. I turned my phone face down on the table, the black screen reflecting the Florida sun. I didn't wait for the likes. I picked up my glass and turned to Teresa. To real family, I said. She clinked her glass against mine. To real family. The silence of the afternoon didn't last long. 10 minutes after I posted the video, my phone started vibrating against the marble tabletop. It didn't stop. It buzzed and danced across the surface like an angry insect. Douglas. Ashley. Douglas again. Ashley's fiancé. Douglas. 42 missed calls. In 1 hour. I swiped open the notifications. The voicemails were a masterclass in spiraling panic. I played them on speaker, letting the sound drift out over the pool deck so my guests could hear the soundtrack of my former life. The first message was from Douglas. His voice was tight. Controlled. The voice he used when he was trying to sell a bad deal to a client. Bella, pick up. People are calling me. They're saying you're in Key West. Is this some kind of rental? Take that post down. You're confusing people. I skipped to the next one. 10 minutes later, the control was slipping. You ungrateful little brat. Do you have any idea who follows your sister? Her fiancé's mother just called us. She thinks we're destitute because of your caption. Delete it. Now. Then came Ashley. She wasn't pretending to be calm. She was screeching. You ruined my aesthetic. Why are you tagging Aunt Teresa? She's wearing a kaftan, Bella. You are embarrassing me. Delete it or I swear to God I will tell everyone you stole that money. I took a sip of my wine. Stole the money. That was rich. I checked the post engagement. It had already been shared 400 times. The comments weren't confusing. They were viciously clear. People love a villain, but they love seeing a bully get punched in the mouth even more. Strangers were tagging Douglas's business page. Ashley's followers, mostly bots and pity follows, were suddenly very active, asking why she let her sister pay her heating bill. They weren't calling me because they missed me. They were calling because I had taken away the one thing they valued more than money. Their narrative. For 30 years, they had controlled the story. I was the loser. They were the winners, I was the burden. They were the martyrs. But one drone shot had flipped the script. And they were terrified. I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb and enjoyed the rest of the afternoon. We watched the sunset. We ate key lime pie. We laughed until our sides hurt. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was the one who had dropped it. But narcissists don't just go away when they lose control. They escalate. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the security panel in my bedroom chirped. Motion detected. Main gate. I grabbed my robe and checked the monitor on the wall. The night vision camera showed a rental sedan idling aggressively at the entrance of my driveway. 2 figures were standing in the headlights, banging on the wrought iron bars. Even in the grainy black and white footage, I recognized the frantic, jerky movements of my father. They hadn't just called. They had boarded a plane. They had flown 1,500 miles on Christmas Day, paid exorbitant last-minute fares, and driven down the overseas highway in a rage. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to break down the door. I watched Douglas kick the gate. He looked small on the screen. Like a child throwing a tantrum because his toy had stopped working. I wasn't afraid. I pressed the intercom button, my voice calm and cold in the humid night air. Go home, Douglas. You're trespassing. I put on my sandals and walked down the long crushed shell driveway. The humidity clung to my skin, heavy and thick. I didn't rush. I let them wait. I let them watch me approach, backlit by the security floodlights, calm and unhurried. When I reached the gate, Douglas was gripping the wrought iron bars so hard his knuckles were white. He looked deranged. His travel clothes were rumpled. His face slick with sweat. Open this gate, he screamed, shaking the metal. You think you can humiliate us to the whole world? I am your father. You owe me this house. You owe me everything. I stopped 5 feet away. Just out of reach. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I realized I wasn't looking at a parent. I was looking at a predator who had just realized the cage was empty. Psychologists have a term for this. It's called an extinction burst. It's what happens when a manipulator pushes the button that used to give them what they wanted: guilt, money, compliance, and nothing happens. They don't walk away. They don't reflect. They panic. They escalate. They scream louder, hit harder, and burn hotter, because their brain cannot compute that they have lost control. Douglas wasn't here because he missed his daughter. He was here because he was terrified that his ATM had finally grown a lock. I don't owe you a thing, Douglas, I said, my voice cutting through his noise. You made that clear. Real family only. Remember? That was a misunderstanding, he roared, spitting through the bars. And you know it. Now open this gate or I will call the police and tell them you stole my credit card to pay for this place. I almost laughed. Do it. Please. That was when Ashley stepped out from behind him. She wasn't screaming. She was smiling. And it was the nastiest, most triumphant smile I had ever seen. She was holding a thick manila folder. Let him call the cops, Dad, she said, her voice dripping with poison. But we don't need them. We have this. She waved the folder through the bars. What is that? I asked. Dad spoke to a lawyer before we got on the plane, Ashley said, opening the file. She pulled out a document, official-looking, stamped with a notary seal. Remember the family support contract Dad made us sign when we turned 18? The one that said any assets acquired while living under his roof belonged to the family trust? I froze. I remembered. It was a piece of paper he made us sign to teach us responsibility before we went to college. I thought it was a joke. A control tactic. You built your little AI code in our basement, Bella, Ashley sneered. You used Dad's electricity. Dad's Wi-Fi. Dad's food. Technically, that $15 million belongs to the family pot. She pressed the paper against the bars. We're not leaving until you sign a quitclaim deed on this property. Half for me, half for Dad. Sign it, or we sue you for every penny. You won't just lose the house. You'll lose everything. For a moment, everything went still. The night. The wind. Even my pulse. Ashley shoved a flimsy trust contract at me. Signed when I was 17. Certain it meant she owned my life. She smirked. Checkmate. Open the gate. I laughed. Not with joy. Cold, brittle laughter that made both of them flinch. You really flew down here with a contract signed under duress, thinking it overrides federal law, I said. But you made one mistake. You thought I was playing defense. I pulled out my phone. You mentioned that $15,000 I sent earlier, I said to Douglas. You told everyone I was paying your bills. You did, he barked. No, I said. You should have read the beneficiary line. I held up the screen. It didn't go to Visa. It went to Minneapolis First National Bank. Distressed Assets Division. Douglas froze. You haven't paid your mortgage in 8 months. The bank classified your loan as toxic and wanted it gone before year-end. I swiped to a deed transfer. I bought the note, I said. I didn't pay your bills. I bought your debt. I own your house. Your roof. Your driveway. Ashley grabbed the phone, read the document, and paled. This says you're the lien holder. Correct. Right now, I'm not your daughter or your sister. I'm the bank. And you just tried to extort the property owner. Douglas stared at me in horror as I tapped the screen. I was going to wait until January, I said. But since you came here threatening to sue me. I pressed the button. Foreclosure begins now. Douglas's phone chimed. He crumpled. It's freezing, he whispered. Where are we supposed to go? I heard you have a real family somewhere, I said. Ashley spiraled, demanding to know where she'd host her fiancé. You won't, I said. The asset freeze hits your credit tomorrow. Security stepped in. Douglas puffed up for one last stand. You can't touch me. I'm her father. Sir, you are trespassing, the guard said. Leave. Now. They retreated to their rental car. Ashley screamed promises of revenge. Tell everyone, I called. Tell them you tried to rob the bank, and the bank won. Their tail lights vanished into the dark. Silence returned. My legs felt light. I walked back to the party. Back to laughter, food, and people who showed up because they love me, not because they wanted something. Later, I opened the family group chat, deleted it, and walked to the dock. The moon lit the water like a silver road. I thought of the girl who used to be excluded at her own kitchen table. I wished she could see me now. Owning the table. The house. And finally, herself. They wanted control. I paid them off and cut them loose. I didn't lose a family tonight. I freed myself from one.